You think depression is all in your head. But what if I told you that for 30% of people, it's actually starting in their gut? And the solution might be sitting in your kitchen right now. Look, I know what it's like. You wake up exhausted. Everything feels like too much effort. You've tried therapy, maybe medication, and you're still stuck in this fog of low motivation and flat mood. Your doctor says it's depression, but here's what they're probably not telling you. For millions of people, depression isn't just a chemical imbalance in the brain. It's inflammation in the body sending alarm signals that are hijacking your mood, your energy, and your motivation. In this video, I'm revealing the hidden connection between chronic inflammation and mental health and showing you the exact dietary changes that put 32% of people with major depression into full remission. Not management, remission. Let's break this down. The body's warning light first. You need to understand what's actually happening inside your body. Think of chronic inflammation like a warning light on your car's dashboard. When you get a cut or twist your ankle, that acute inflammation, the redness, the swelling, that's supposed to be temporary. It's your body's emergency crew showing up, doing the repair work, and then leaving. But chronic inflammation? That warning light flickers on and just never turns off. It stays on for months, even years. And that constant signal doesn't just affect your joints or your gut. It reaches up into your brain and starts messing with the very chemicals that control your mood and motivation. Here's what triggers this never-ending alarm. Chronic stress, a diet loaded with processed foods and sugar, sitting all day, and even poor sleep. These modern lifestyle factors keep your immune system in a constant state of alert, releasing inflammatory messenger molecules called cytokines. Now, your brain is protected by something called the blood-brain barrier. Think of it like a security gate that controls what gets in and out. So how do these inflammatory signals reach your brain? Scientists have identified 3 sneaky pathways. First, the barrier isn't perfectly sealed everywhere. In certain spots, it's naturally more permeable, and cytokines can slip through. Second, these inflammatory molecules can activate the border patrol cells of the barrier itself, which then shout the warning into the brain without the cytokines ever crossing. And third, this one's wild cytokines can bind to peripheral nerves like the vagus nerve, which acts like a direct data cable to your brain, transmitting the inflammatory signal almost instantly. Once these signals arrive in your brain, they don't just make you feel generally unwell. They target specific systems with surgical precision. The triple attack on your brain inflammation doesn't just send a vague message of sickness to your brain. It actively sabotages 3 critical systems that control how you feel and function every single day. First, let's talk about serotonin, the feel-good chemical. To make serotonin, your brain needs a building block called tryptophan. Normally, tryptophan gets sent down the production line that creates serotonin. But inflammation activates a rogue enzyme called EDO that hijacks the tryptophan and diverts it down a completely different pathway called the kynurenine pathway. Think of it like a factory saboteur. Instead of making the mood-stabilizing chemical you need, this alternate pathway produces neurotoxic metabolites, literally toxic compounds that damage your brain cells. So you end up with less serotonin and more brain toxins. Double hit. Second, dopamine, your motivation molecule. This is the chemical that makes you want to get out of bed, pursue goals, and feel pleasure when you achieve something. Inflammation turns down the volume on your entire dopamine system. It reduces how much dopamine your brain makes, how much it releases, and how efficiently it signals between neurons. This directly explains one of the most misunderstood symptoms of depression: anhedonia. Most people think anhedonia means you can't feel pleasure. But that's not quite right. What it really means is you've lost the motivation to seek out pleasure. It's not that the movie isn't funny anymore, it's that getting off the couch to watch it feels like climbing a mountain. Inflammation is literally dampening the drive circuit in your brain that makes effort feel worth it. And third, something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. Think of this as fertilizer for your brain. It helps new brain cells grow and keeps existing ones strong and healthy in a process called neuroplasticity. It's how your brain adapts, learns, and repairs itself. Chronic inflammation slashes your BDNF levels. And when your brain can't repair and adapt, you get stuck. This is one reason why people with long-term depression often describe feeling like they're in a mental rut they can't escape. So to recap, inflammation hijacks your serotonin production, kills your dopamine-driven motivation, and shuts down your brain's repair system. It's a triple attack on your mental health. Quick pause if this is connecting dots for you and you're finally starting to understand why you've been feeling the way you do. Hit that subscribe button. I break down the science behind your symptoms and give you real, actionable solutions every single week. Alright, here's where it gets really powerful. The ancient survival program gone wrong. Now here's the part that completely reframes everything. The fatigue, the social withdrawal, the complete lack of motivation, these aren't signs that you're broken. They're an ancient survival program that's been activated by mistake. It's called sickness behavior. When our ancestors got an infection or a serious injury, their immune systems would trigger inflammation. And that inflammation would flip a behavioral switch. Withdraw from social activity, rest, conserve energy, stop seeking out food or rewards. This was life-saving. Your body needed to redirect every ounce of energy toward fighting the infection and healing the wound. The problem? In the modern world, this program gets triggered not by infections, but by chronic stressors. A diet full of processed foods, sitting all day, chronic psychological stress. These things constantly activate your immune system, which keeps triggering that ancient sickness behavior program. So your brain thinks you're fighting off a life-threatening infection when really, you're just living a modern lifestyle. The alarm never shuts off. And that persistent activation of sickness behavior is what we recognize as depression. This isn't a personal failing. This isn't weakness. This is your body running an outdated survival program in response to 21st century problems. And here's the empowering part. If chronic inflammation is the trigger, then we can interrupt the signal. The SMILES trial proof that food heals the brain. In 2017, Australian researchers conducted a landmark study called the SMILES trial. They wanted to answer one simple question. If people with major depression improve their diet, will their mental health improve? They took 67 adults with moderate to severe depression and split them into two groups. One group got 7 sessions with a dietitian who guided them through adopting a modified Mediterranean diet: whole grains, vegetables, fruits, legumes, fish, olive oil, and limiting processed foods, sweets, and fast food. The control group got social support sessions for the same amount of time. After 12 weeks, the results were absolutely stunning. The dietary group showed an average reduction of 11 points on the depression scale compared to just 4 points in the social support group. But here's the stat that matters most. 32.3% of people in the diet group achieved full remission from their major depressive episode. Full remission. In the control group, only 8%. Let me put that in perspective. The number needed to treat was 4.1. That means for every 4 people who adopted this healthy diet, 1 went into complete remission from major depression. In medicine, that's considered a highly effective intervention comparable to standard antidepressant medications. And here's the kicker. This had nothing to do with weight loss. The improvements in depression were independent of changes in body weight. It was about the quality of the food, not the quantity. The anti-inflammatory compounds in whole foods were directly affecting brain chemistry. Oh, and the myth that healthy eating is expensive? Completely shattered. The researchers calculated the cost, and the healthy Mediterranean-style diet was actually cheaper. 112 Australian dollars per week compared to the $138 participants were spending on their baseline junk food diets. This trial proved that dietary intervention isn't just a nice complementary strategy. For many people, it's a frontline treatment for major depression. The inflammatory subgroup. Why your antidepressants might not work now. This is critical to understand. Not everyone's depression is driven by inflammation. But research shows that approximately 30% of people with depression have a distinct inflammatory subtype. These are people with elevated blood markers like C-reactive protein. And here's the problem. This inflammatory subgroup often doesn't respond well to standard antidepressants like SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. You know, Prozac, Zoloft, all the common ones. These drugs try to increase serotonin, but if inflammation is hijacking your tryptophan and producing neurotoxins instead, boosting serotonin reuptake isn't addressing the root cause. This is why some people cycle through medication after medication with no relief. They're not treatment resistant because the depression is too severe. They're treatment resistant because they're being treated for the wrong subtype. The good news? Studies show that people in this inflammatory subgroup respond better to different approaches. Antidepressants that modulate dopamine and norepinephrine, like bupropion. Anti-inflammatory interventions, and dietary changes that directly target the immune system. This is the future of mental health care: precision psychiatry. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, we identify which biological pathway is driving your symptoms and target that specifically. If you've struggled with treatment-resistant depression, it might be worth asking your doctor for a simple blood test to check your inflammatory markers. That one test could completely change your treatment strategy. Alright, let's bring this all together. For decades, we've treated mental health like it's completely separate from physical health, like your brain exists in isolation from the rest of your body. But that's not how biology works. Your immune system and your brain are in constant conversation. And when chronic inflammation hijacks that conversation, it can drive the exact symptoms we call depression. The fatigue, the lack of motivation, the flat mood, the inability to feel like anything is worth the effort. But here's the empowering truth. You're not powerless. The same lifestyle choices that protect your physical health, eating whole, nutrient-dense foods, managing stress, staying active, getting quality sleep, these are also fundamental for your mental well-being. Start with your diet. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight. Just start shifting toward more whole foods and fewer processed ones. More vegetables, more healthy fats, more omega-3s from fish. Less sugar, less refined carbs, less inflammatory junk. The SMILES trial showed that people with clinical depression, people with fatigue and zero motivation, were able to make these changes. And it worked. If this video helped you see your symptoms in a new light, I need you to do two things. First, smash that like button and drop a comment telling me, have you ever noticed your mood change after eating certain foods? I want to hear your experience. Your brain is not broken. It's inflamed, and inflammation can be cooled. Let's make it happen. I'll see you in the next one.